Good evening. Welcome to our study tonight. I'm sorry we're a little late. We're having a little trouble with our microphones. As a matter of fact, we're using a different one, so just bear with us. It may not sound the same as it normally does. There's a lot of in the news, especially with Israel this week. So I want to start right off with that. As we look here um, at our charts, I want you to see what's going on here. This is an article that just came in, and it's a really good article. It's just as Ezekiel predicted, Iran's newest proxy is Sudan. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you in a moment. Bible prophecy tells us that in the latter days, a group of nations and invade Israel. These attackers will come out of the uttermost parts of the north, the Bible says, and there will be so many that God says there will be like a cloud covering the land. Ezekiel 38:15 and 16. Their strike force will be so overwhelming that it seems Israel will have no chance for survival. The major events happening right in the Middle East today indicate some serious stage setting is taking place for this war. A careful study of the ancient place names that are listed in Ezekiel 38, 2 to 6, reveals the military coalition will include Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, and possibly Algeria. Now, if you look at this map, you'll see Rosh, Magog, Persia, Put, Meshech. The one we have not seen in place so far is Cush until this week. Listen to it. Despite Turkey being part of NATO. But just today, Turkey's President Recep Erdogan condemned Israel's ground operation in Lebanon and urged the United Nations and other international organizations this coalition of nations. Iran has for a while been trying to establish a port in Sudan's major coastal Port Sudan. Iran's strategy of supporting and infiltrating other countries and terrorist groups, as it has done in Iraq, Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, Venezuela, and Yemen. It appears as yet another extension of its strategy of moving into territories with weak or unstable governments to expand its influence throughout the Middle East. Now it's Sudan. Sudan is in play. It's yet another piece of Ezekiel's prophecy. You see, Sudan is ancient Kush, and that's what you're seeing on that map. Let's go a little bit further and show you some former Secretary of State took part in the World Economic Forum, WEF, on a panel on green energy on Wednesday. Near the end of the panel, a member of the audience asked what can be done to push back against disinformation surrounding climate change online. He said this: if people only go to one source and the source they go to is sick, and has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. Kerry wants to do away with the First Amendment. Our founding fathers would have hung Kerry from the nearest lamppost if he said that in 1776. We should probably call him King George Carey III. Our First Amendment is the fundamental basis of our existence as a democracy. The right to question your government. Let's go to Israel, and there's a lot about Israel tonight. IDF strikes have wrecked Hezbollah's command structure and firepower. Army and their ability to attack. Recent airstrikes have not only taken out almost the whole of Hezbollah's command structure, but have also strategically crippled its ability to fire rockets and missiles, reducing its planned mass barrages to much smaller attacks. This is what you're seeing in the news right now. So Iran shows it's a full force sending 181 ballistic missiles into Israel this week. Why? Because Hezbollah has been rendered obsolete almost. I want you to understand the Israeli Air Force strike on Hezbollah's terrorist headquarters in the Dahye neighborhood of Beirut on Friday eliminated Hassan Nasrallah. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to get on the news in a moment. All these articles in Israel are going to connect. And as I'll show you, that this is why Iran sent that barrage of missiles, because he was killed. I'll tell you why in a moment. Under Nasrallah's leadership since 1992, Hezbollah transformed into a formidable force, going from terror organization to terror army, and carrying out attacks across Israel and the world. Nasrallah was one of the world's strongest and most influential terrorists, and he was a real threat with the blood of thousands on his hands. When Israel's airstrikes in recent weeks are taken together, the toll on Hezbollah's command structure appears to be catastrophic for the terror organization. Israeli strikes have eliminated the following commanders: al-Karaki, commander of Hezbollah's southern front and second in command overall; Ibrahim Quabasi, head of the Missiles and Rocket Force; Ibrahim Aqil, commander of the elite Radon Force; Wissam al-Tawil, former commander of Radon Force; Abu Hassan, additional terrorists include Mohammed Hussein Saur, commander of the Hezbollah's aerial command; Sami Talib Abdullah, commander of Nasser unit in southern Lebanon; and Mohammad Nasser, commander of the Aziz territorial unit in southern Lebanon. So they've taken out quite a bit. These commanders were pivotal to Hezbollah, and their elimination has resulted in chaos within the group's command structure. Most of the senior leaders of Hezbollah have been eliminated. The fate of Hashim Safi al-Din, head of Hezbollah's executive council, potentially Nasrallah's successor, is unknown at this time. But I think he has a large Star of David, an Israeli bullseye, on his back right now. He needs to travel to Mars. Maybe he'll escape an Israeli rocket. The threat of rockets and missiles from Hezbollah is last week they said it was not done yet. This is before the ground attack. They still had tens of thousands of rockets, different kinds that we are working to prevent them from shooting towards Israel, one of Israel's commanders said. One of Hezbollah's key threats, long-range and precision-guided missiles, has also been substantially weakened. That's why Iran finally acted. Hezbollah is crippled. The IAF has devastated Hezbollah's Iranian supplier, Qadar anti-ship cruise missiles. The destruction of these missiles, along with other strategic threats, has so far prevented Hezbollah from carrying out its publicly stated goal of striking Israel's critical infrastructure. Let me tell you what was going to happen. Israel got some advanced understanding and some advanced spying to know that Hezbollah is ready to strike Israel from the north, just like the October 7th. So they went in on the ground. The latest strikes joined the Mossad attributed 17th, 18th pager and walkie-talkie explosive attacks and injured thousands of Hezbollah operatives, including a large number of field commanders. And the waves of IAF attacks from September 23rd, 25th to 25th, targeting over 2,000 Hezbollah rocket launch sites. And this week, Israel struck the Houthis in Yemen. Israel is fighting four fronts at once. In Lebanon, they're fighting Hezbollah. In Gaza, Hamas. In Yemen, the Houthis. Now in Iraq, I've talked to my friends in Israel. All they can say is that miracle after miracle is happening in Israel. Think about it. 181 ballistic missiles all over, sent at night all over Israel to cover the entire land. Not one person was killed. Ironically, the only one that was killed was a Palestinian living in Jordan. And so we're watching something happen that is very prophetic, very monumental. Let me give you a little bit more to get you into the prophetic side of it. Isaiah 17:1 says, "The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap." That has never happened. And here it is, your next headline news. Hasn't happened yet? It's coming. So we know that on the ground in southern Lebanon, Israel has invaded, preempting a terror strike. But and so we understand the Israeli army and Al Jazeera is citing Heretz's report that these forces were awaiting orders from Hezbollah's Security General Hassan Nasrallah. So what happened was they took him out, and then they took out on the ground forces. They started to take out the strategic spots in southern Lebanon. It's very, very planned by Israel, but he will never give those orders. He can't give the orders to attack because he's dead. Israel took him out last week. Israeli security officials 2 weeks ago voiced concern about the growing threat, noting that while these fighters may not be the elite, their presence is significant. But when Israel went in, they were nowhere to be found. The elite fighters were nowhere to be found of Hezbollah. The presence of such a large force posing a threat to Israel from the Syrian region will remind Bible prophecy students of the prophecy found in the book of Isaiah, which I quoted, which deals with this region. Chapter 17 in the book of Isaiah paints a sobering picture of it. The city of Damascus is a pile of rubble. The Bible says it'll disappear from the face of the earth and become a heap of ruins. 17:1 Isaiah. At the same time, large parts of northern Israel will also lie in ruin. Isaiah 17:3 says. Now, before you say this prophecy was fulfilled during the Old Testament times, keep this in mind. The passage says Damascus will cease to be a city. It will be utterly and completely destroyed. Yet Damascus is one of the oldest continuous inhabited cities on record. Its history goes back more than 5,000 years. At 2,600 years ago, the book of Isaiah itself is new compared to Damascus. This prophecy is yet to be fulfilled. This may be the news headlines very, very soon. So how interesting it is that a new potential battle that's forming in the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is on the Syrian border. Damascus is in Syria. Only time will tell if we are approaching the fulfillment of this prophecy, along with other potential biblical prophecies dealing with Israel's enemies at this time. How will Damascus be destroyed? Well, if it's a pile of ruins and rubble, it's quite possible it'll be a limited nuclear exchange. Bible doesn't say that. It says it'll be a ruinous heap, and I believe that is going to be there are 22 aggressive Israeli terrorist groups that have headquarters in Damascus, and Israel is not shy in taking that city out. So that may be getting us closer and closer. Now, here's the thing I want to tell you. This is what you won't get on national news. You don't get a whole lot of national news anyway, but you're not going to get this. This is the tie-in of why this is all happening right now, and we really need to hear it. Listen, Nasrallah was a direct descendant of Muhammad. That's why the region is on the brink of war. A lot of big names have been killed in the Middle East. I just read them to you during the past 12 months. But the death of Hassan Nasrallah is something completely different, and most people don't know it. He was believed to be a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. In Shia Islam, this is a really, really, really big thing. An attack on Nasrallah is literally considered to be an attack of the family of Muhammad himself. This is why we're witnessing so much rage in Islamic nations all over the world right now. I don't know why hardly anyone in the Western world is talking about this. No one is saying a thing. We should be hearing this. This is crucial. The Shia radicals must be vengeance for the death of Nasrallah. There's simply no other option. They want revenge. A lot of people in the Western world seem to think that Nasrallah is just another terrorist that died and it will soon be forgotten. That is not how Shia Islam works. According to Israeli media, over 80 one-ton bombs were used to dig deep ground busters into the ground and reached Hezbollah's high command bunker, located under 6 apartment buildings that were completely flattened. They went out of their way to get this guy. If you are convinced that Hezbollah will back down after this, well, then you don't understand how they think. If you think Iran will back down, you don't understand how they think. Nasrallah was greatly loved by his people because they believed he was a direct descendant of Muhammad. The following comes from Wikipedia. Nasrallah was often referred to as al-Sayyid Hassan, the horrific Sayyid, denoting a claim of direct descent from the Islamic prophet Muhammad through his grandson, Hussein ibn Ali. To those that believe in Shia Islam, Nasrallah was a living, breathing link to the founder of their faith. Nasrallah had 3 sons, and he actually named 2 of them after this very famous ancestor. Nasrallah is survived by his wife, Fatima Yassin. Again, he has 3 sons. Excuse me. 3 sons, Muhammad, Mahdi, Jawad, and Muhammad Ali, and a daughter, Zainab, as well as several grandchildren. In Shia Islam, there's a widespread belief that an apocalyptic figure known as the Mahdi will appear in our day and in our time to end a war in the Middle East, a massive war. It's also believed that the name of the Mahdi will be Muhammad. And so that is why so many Islamic parents give the name to their male children. It's the number one name of males in the entire world. Hassan Nasrallah and the terrorist group he led, Hezbollah, was responsible for killing hundreds of Americans over a 4-decade reign of terror. His death from an Israeli airstrike is a measure of justice for his many victims, including thousands of American Israelis and Lebanese civilians. I'm quoting President Biden, whether you believe it or not. Just listen. He also said the White House says the Pentagon has been ordered to enhance America's defense posture and readiness in the Middle East. There are thousands of Shia Muslims in the swing state of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania that will never vote for Kamala Harris after reading or hearing that. Joe Biden doesn't seem, though, to understand that this wasn't just the death of yet another terrorist leader. The death of Nasrallah changes absolutely everything. Hezbollah isn't going to go back down over this. They're going to come back. That's why Israel went into southern Lebanon this week. Iran will not back down. They're going to go completely nuts. Of course, it isn't just Hezbollah or Iran that is steaming mad. On Sunday, thousands of Iraqi protesters tried to storm the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. Clashes took place Sunday in Pakistan's largest city of Karachi as local police tried to disperse protesters who marched towards the city's U.S. consulate to mourn the death of Hezbollah's chief Hassan Nasrallah. Video on social media showed police firing tear gas and warning shots, with protesters throwing stones and trying to cross barriers blocking access to the U.S. consulate. The protests were led by Majila Wadat ed Muslimin, a Pakistani Shia Islamic political organization, which told CNN that their nationwide protests were peaceful, and the Iranian government vowed that there'll be revenge. Consequently, the 181 ballistic missiles fired at Israel at the start of Rosh Hashanah. At the start of Rosh Hashanah. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei announced 5 days of mourning in Iran in response to what he called, quote, the martyrdom of the great Nasrallah, describing as a path and a school of thought that would continue. Iranian media reported that an Iranian Revolutionary Guard general was also killed in Israeli strikes at Beirut on Friday. Of course, Israel is not going to back down either. In fact, the IDF took out yet another high-ranking Hezbollah official on Sunday. Israeli military said Sunday it has killed another high-ranking Hezbollah official in an airstrike of the Lebanese militant group was reeling from a string of devastating blows and the killing of its overall leader, Nasrallah. The military said Nobil Kaouk, the deputy head of Hezbollah's Central Council, was killed on Saturday. Hezbollah confirmed his death, making him the seventh senior Hezbollah leader slain in Israeli strikes in a little over a week. They include founding members who had evaded death or detention for decades. And the Israelis also just hit the Houthis in Yemen really, really hard. So they are fighting. They are fighting with everything they can. And let me tell you something, this is not going to end well. And all that war is on the doorstep. And the U.S. State Department has just issued a very ominous order. The U.S. State Department on Saturday ordered the families of embassy personnel in Beirut to leave the country and authorized the departure of staff as the Israeli-Hezbollah conflict escalates. Why? Because they know it's coming. This is the big Middle East war that, honestly, I've been warning about for a long, long time. And only one side will be left standing when it's all over. I think we know which one that will be. When there are two opponents that are willing to do whatever it takes to win, no matter what the cost, that creates a situation where events can spiral out of control very, very easily. We should all be deeply saddened by what's about to happen because a very large number of people are about to die. And I pray it doesn't happen. I pray nuclear weapons, small strategic nuclear weapons, do not come out. Let's continue. By the way, that chart is Nasrallah. Hassan Nasrallah has been eliminated, and he was the mastermind of Hezbollah and a lot of terrorism around the world. And this came out. So it can be confusing when you listen to American politics and you listen to American politicians, especially concerning Israel. Hopefully, this will clear a little bit up. Israel races for military victory as Harris policies expected to be hostile. Israel finds itself today standing increasingly alone as the world rejects its right to defend itself against genocidal enemies. And the United States heads, as the United States heads to elections in November, Israelis are worried that Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is demonstrating less support for Israel and more sympathy for Palestinians and their supporters. For instance, she's consistently tried to tie Israel's hands, calling for the Jewish state to end its war against Hamas, just like Biden has, and refused to attend Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress in July. According to Michael Rubin, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, an administration led by Harris, quote, is likely to be the most hostile U.S. administration to Israel since U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower's first term in 1953. He says even if Harris is neutral on Israel, her progressive base is out for blood, and specifically Israeli blood. As the Biden administration appeases Iran, an Islamic regime attacks Israel directly. Even before Israel assassinated Hezbollah's leader and arch terrorist Hassan Nasrallah on Friday, the international community, including the Biden administration, was working hard to achieve a ceasefire to save Hezbollah. Israel is never allowed to win in the American policy. So when Harrison was asked how she would broker a deal to end the war between Israel and Hamas, she said she'd continue to work on a two-state solution around the clock. Lie, lie, lie. First of all, she's not going to work around the clock. And secondly, it's a major red flag. The Palestinians have made it clear numerous times since 1947 they are not interested in a two-state solution and prefer to destroy Israel completely. What Harris means then is that she does not want Israel to achieve victory. Instead, she wants to give Palestinians a state as a prize for launching endless terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians for decades of instead of pursuing the establishment of their own state through peaceful means. This week, Harris said she will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, and in particular, as it refers to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. In June, Netanyahu released a video on social media saying that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel, the Biden administration. Israel also warned about Iran obtaining nuclear capability, a dangerous scenario made even more likely by both Obama and the Biden administrations, which gave Iran hundreds of billions of dollars to appease the Islamic regime. Iran's runaway strides in its nuclear program have taken place largely under the watch of the Biden Harris administration. Perplexing, verging on treasonous, that the Biden Harris administration has not taken any divisive action to prevent Iran from going nuclear or even causing any less devastation in the Middle East. We should have been stepping in way, way before now. We're not even now. The Biden administration's lack of clear plan, let alone any desire to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions, is shocking. A Harris administration will almost certainly continue to finance Iran, appease its murderous regime, and allow it to acquire nuclear weapons. We are in trouble if a Harris gets elected because she is talking out of both sides of her mouth. They will constantly say they'll help protect Israel. Yes, we have carriers that are their nuclear carriers. We're helping with the Iron Dome and shooting down things. But Israel is going to attack Iran. Israel went into southern Lebanon without conferring with the United States. They've had it. They've had enough of the United States saying, wait, 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 with their diplomacy. They went in and the United States was dumbfounded. They're going to do the same thing with Iran, and it's going to happen very quick. Let's go a little bit further into economy. It's just that when we think that we have things that are okay, some other things happen. Well, you know what? Let me do something else first. Let me do this because I want to stay on that vein of Israel. By seeking victory, Israel turns Washington's world upside down. So since October 7th, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has largely played by the rules set down by his American allies, though it didn't spare him from a constant unfair criticism, in which President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken often echoed Hamas's propaganda about children casualties in Gaza. Netanyahu was determined to avoid an open split with the United States. But in the last several weeks, as he began serious efforts to force Hezbollah and its Iranian paymasters to back down and stop firing on northern Israel, the prime minister is trying something different. Rather than being tied to the futile and self-defeating Biden policy that treats diplomacy as an end unto itself, he has chosen a strategy that gives his nation a reasonable chance to achieve victory over its enemies. This has proven to be a great shock to Washington, as it has been to Tehran and its Hezbollah auxiliaries in Lebanon. They never thought Israel would go in and attack them. They don't think that they didn't think that they would go against Iran because America was pushing Israel not to do that. America was constantly telling them, "You can't do this. We're going to do diplomacy. We're going to go through the lines." And Netanyahu had it with it after a year of constant bombardment. I mean, imagine if we were bombarded from Canada with ballistic missiles for over a year. You think we'd sit by and diplomatically talk to them? Absolutely not. Netanyahu is proving that he is a masterful leader. He's not dependent on America. Thus, the series of devastating blows delivered by terrorists by Israel is a grave disappointment to an administration that has been determined to rein in the Jewish state's desire for security on its northern border, even if that meant tolerating the depopulation of the region due to Hezbollah missile fire. 100,000 Israelis are displaced from the northern border. The conceit of American policy has been a belief not only in the virtues of diplomacy and of holding on to a false hope and a futile hope, at the heart of former President Barack Obama's dangerous 2015 Iran nuclear deal of a rapprochement with Tehran. So the fact that in the course of 2 weeks, Netanyahu and Israel have exposed these assumptions as dead wrong is not only a humiliation for Biden and Harris and their foreign policy team, but has turned their worldview upside down. And the myth was that Hezbollah was invincible and they had to be able to broker with them on a table. Netanyahu is shattering that myth. And so basically, we're watching something happen that's really unprecedented with American Israeli understandings. The American belief that Hezbollah ought not to be challenged and its possession of up to 200,000 missiles that might be fired at Israel at the event of an all out war, a number that would overwhelm Israel's vaunted missile defense systems and result in mass casualties and destruction, was seen as a decisive weapon for which Israel had no answer. Well, this week they gave an answer. This week they went on the attack. This week they went on the offensive. More than that, they see the commitment to keep up the missile fire on on uh, on the southern border and to put their boots on the ground. The choices facing Netanyahu were grim. If he were to follow U.S. advice and accept a ceasefire with Hezbollah, it would, like the various similar deals with Hamas and Washington, has tried to force on the Israelis, do nothing to help people of northern Israel and only reinforce Iran's regional power. That set up Israel with a choice between certain defeat for Israel's security via American diplomacy or the possibility of achieving a genuine victory over Hezbollah and Iran via decisive military offensive. And that's what Netanyahu chose. This is a lesson that liberal Americans refuse to learn, no matter how many times it's proven to be true. Diplomacy with rogue nations just doesn't work. These nations are out of their mind. These nations are backed by a militia that is radicalized, and it's a religious radicalization. But it's one that the people of Israel are still under siege, by the way, understand. I've been talking to my friends in Israel, as I told you. They are more excited now than they ever have been. There was a coalition in Israel that is looking for one thing. They want to survive. And basically what they're saying right now is we need to take out everyone that's going against us. That's totally different from in Israel only a couple months ago. So if things cost more, so basically what we're seeing that Israel is paying the cost. They realize that it's coming in. They realize that Hezbollah was on the offensive. Yemen and the Houthis were on offensive. Iran now is on the offensive and throwing missiles. And of course, Hamas is almost but obliterated. But Israel is going to fight back. This is the first time Israel's been unleashed because they're not listening to America. And they have to protect themselves. America all day long will say they have to protect themselves, but they'll never agree to Israel doing anything offensively. Now Israel's taking the offensive. Let's go a little bit further and tell you a little bit about the economy. I've been warning about the economy for a long, long time, maybe too long, but this is continual. And here it comes again. And there's something else added to it just this week. Is the day of reckoning here? Americans are running out of money. Americans are running out of money. According to the Federal Reserve, America's savings rate just hit a fresh low while credit card balances hit a record high, with 25% interest on credit cards. In short, the median American is currently scrounging for coins in the couch and putting the hamburger helper on the Visa. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the nation's personal savings rate just hit 2.9%. That's 2.9 cents on the dollar. When I studied economics in college, they told us about the multiple propensity to consume and the multiple propensity to save. MPS, MPC. The multiple propensity to consume is out of every dollar, how much money do you spend and how much money do you save? In 1970, we saved 40 cents on a dollar. Today, we're saving 2.9 cents on every dollar earned. That's the second worst rate in 75 years. What's driving it is, according to new analysis, inflation-adjusted real median household income. How much 50th percentile of households make actually dropped since 2019. So if things cost more and you're not making more, the last man standing is dumping the piggy bank or last quick check of the couch cushions and its credit cards as far as the eye can see. What's driving the weak incomes? Three things: slow job growth, meaning wages are keeping up with inflation itself, and the Fed's rate hikes that have given us those 25% credit cards and 7.5% mortgages on $500,000 starter homes. So consumer debt is up about $300 billion, hitting a record 5 trillion in just consumer debt. There's another 12 trillion in mortgage and other debts. We are way over our head in debt. A big chunk of that is credit cards. just hit a record $1.14 trillion, while the average annual percentage rate on credit cards, according to Lending Tree, and again, I've been telling you this number, is 24.92%, 25%. That's cheaper than the mafia, isn't it? Keep in mind, if credit card charges 25% interest, that's 1.14 trillion means close to a quarter trillion in annual credit card interest alone. The American consumer is floating on drained savings, credit card debt, and government money. And even with all that, incomes are still falling. None of this is sustainable. We learned in 2008 that it's not sustainable, but it's a lot easier for Washington to kick the can down the road, to let the American people mortgage their future or put their future on credit, than it is to take a federal boot off their neck of the job creators, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and manufacturers. Economist Herb Stein famously said, "Whatever can't go on forever will stop. The music's running out." Let me show you this. 45,000 U.S. port workers set to strike. What does it mean? As of October 1st, the longshoremen are on strike on the entire East Coast and the Gulf. So get ready. I told you this 2 weeks ago that this was coming. I told you to start preparing, start buying some things even for Christmas, because you may not get the staples, and you may not get the gifts, you may not even get the staples. It will affect 45% of the goods coming into the United States. 45% of the goods, and it will drive prices through the ceiling. I think of 1972. In 1972, I had a 250 motorcycle. It was foreign made motorcycle, and the fuel pump went out on it. And I brought it to a repair place, a repair shop, and right then there was the longshoreman strike in California. I waited 5 months for a fuel pump that cost $30. That's what's going to happen if this strike goes on for a long, long time. It's going to cripple already crippled economy. A little bit further. Again, if you don't see the signs all around us, then I don't know what you're looking at. But the Bible is explicit in Matthew 24 and in Luke to tell us that these signs are going to happen right before Christ comes back. Here's another one: a world on fire. Here's what you'll never hear on our propaganda news in the United States. Forest fires are burning around the globe. In the Rocky Mountains of the United States and Canada, thousands of acres are on fire. In Portugal, more than 100 fires are blazing right now. South American nation of Bolivia, fires have given the city of Santa Cruz some of the worst air quality in the world. City dwellers are encouraged to wear masks to protect against smoke so dense that the sun looks just like the moon at night. The conditions are causing flight cancellations and school closings, while breathing and eye problems are dramatically increased. The dense smoke is causing significant health issues for the population. Fires in Bolivia have caused nearly 20 million hectares of deforestation in the last 20 years. In Brazil, the Amazon is ablaze. As bad as things may be for so many, Scripture speaks of a time coming, a time of fires and devastation far beyond today's wildfires, when a third of the earth's trees and all of its grass will be burned up. Revelation 8:7. This will occur at the beginning of the prophesied 7-year period called the Day of the Lord. Yet after Christ's return, those who obey their Creator are assured they'll receive the rain that they need in Joel 2:23. Not just fires, flooding. Flooding in Eastern Europe, an apocalypse. While forest fires on multiple continents, Eastern Europe is being devastated by flooding, and we've seen it just with Hurricane Helene. As one 16-year-old said after observing the devastation in the Polish town of Ladek Zdradoj, it's a city like an apocalypse. It's a ghost town. And of course, Biden today said that Helene and all the flooding there is because of climate change. Listen, these guys are not listening to what the Bible says. Tens of thousands of people across Romania, Poland, Czech Republic have been directed to evacuate as torrential rains cause rivers to rise and flood surrounding areas. In the Czech town of Litovel, 70% of the town was submerged by 3 feet of water. In the northeastern Czech city of Ostrava, a broken barrier on the Odra River and its confluence with the Opava River caused flooding of the city's industrial area, including the Bordsam chemical plant, coking plant, OKK Koksory, and others. Poland is setting aside $1 billion zlotys, which is $260 million, for rebuilding and is asking the EU for additional funds. A fearful 70-year-old from the Czech Republic exclaimed, "Armageddon. It's literally ripped out of everything because we don't have a single bridge. In Ladek, all bridges have disappeared. We are practically cut off from the world." Dense populations residing in low-lying areas, poor building codes, changing weather patterns, and saturated soil have combined to produce this severe devastation. As people around the globe suffer from natural disasters, Christians should beseech God to send his Son quickly, bringing his kingdom of peace. That will be a time when homes and cities will no longer be subject to seemingly random destruction due to catastrophic weather, and people will dwell, quote, in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. Isaiah 32:18. Lastly, tonight, sign in the heavens, biblical feast days, and war in the Middle East. Let's connect them. We've been telling you about the comets and the asteroids. We've been telling you about that. And now we see the war in Israel. Most of the signs in the stars are about Israel. And this one is no different. This one's a big one. All of a sudden, everything has changed. Israeli troops have entered southern Lebanon. Iran has fired hundreds of missiles into the land of Israel. And it appears that an all out war has arrived. This war doesn't seem to have a commonly accepted name yet. I'm going to call it the biblical war because that's what it is. It's just a coincidence. Is it just a coincidence that this war has suddenly exploded as the comet of the century is flying past our planet right now? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly stated that Iran has made a big mistake and that the Iranians will pay for what they have done. Iran made a big mistake tonight, I'm quoting him, and will pay for it. The regime in Iran does not understand our determination to defend ourselves and our determination to retaliate against our enemies, he said. That sounds ominous, doesn't it? So what should we expect? Well, one Israeli news source is reporting that the IDF intends to conduct, quote, powerful airstrikes throughout the Middle East. The military confirmed that the Air Force remains fully operational. Additional Israeli and U.S. defense systems effectively intercepted many of the incoming missiles, with the IDF reporting close cooperation in detection and interception efforts. A defense official promised a severe response, while another Israeli official warned, quote, what Iran has suffered so far is only a fraction of what it will face now. Could Israel strike Iran itself? It's certainly possible. Naftali Bennett is even suggesting that this is the perfect time to destroy Iran's nuclear program. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett calls for Israel to act now against Iran's nuclear program, saying the Islamic Republic made a terrible mistake with its major missile attacks this evening. Israel has now its greatest opportunity in 50 years to change the face of the Middle East, Bennett writes in an English language post on X. We must act now, he says, to destroy Iran's nuclear program, its central energy facilities, and to fatally cripple this terrorist regime. Such an attack would definitely trigger an unstoppable chain of effects. Iran has warned that there will be a crushing attack if Israel responds, and Iranians also seem to be threatening the United States. Iran's armed forces warn against any direct military intervention in support of Israel in response to Iran's missile attack. I'm quoting, in the event of direct intervention by countries supporting the regime, Israel, their centers and interests in the region will also face a powerful attack by the armed forces of Islamic Republic of Iran. The armed forces said in a statement quoted by Fars news agency. The Biden administration promised Iran that there would be severe consequences. Remember Biden? Don't. That's what he said, don't. Well, they did if the Iranians launch missiles at Israel. Now what will he do? It is put up or shut up time for the Biden administration. As all of this has been going on, the comet of the century has been putting on a spectacular show in the heavens. Comet Sekutinshan Atlas is putting on a delightfully early morning display for those fortunate enough to catch a glimpse of the spectacle before its last in the glare of the rising sun, lost. But it's not just the early birds with good seats to show. Astronauts at the International Space Station are also enjoying the spectacle. We're being told that there will be two windows for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere to view this comet. Weather permitting, everyone in the Northern Hemisphere should be able to see the comet A3 in October. It's called A3. There are two windows to catch it streaking across the sky. One just ended today. The other is coming on October 12th to the 30th. And it's now being projected that Yom Kippur was the time when this comet is the closest to our planet and what will also be the brightest. These are not coincidences. If the comet survives perihelion, which is going around the sun, it will make its way back to the Earth. The comet will be the brightest on October 12th when it makes its closest approach to our planet. During this time, Comet Atlas will be located relatively high above the horizon in the evening sky, visible by the naked eye. That is some coincidence, isn't it? On the top of everything else, a ring of fire solar eclipse is occurring right now over planet Earth. For the first time since April's solar eclipse, some will be able to see another eclipse. The noteworthy event, called the annual eclipse or ring of fire, is now visible over parts of South America, and a partial eclipse will also be seen in parts of the world, including Israel. At the time of this eclipse, the sun will already be down in Israel, and the festival of Rosh Hashanah will have commenced. So it's amazing The first solar eclipse that occurred in 2024 happened the first day of the first month of the biblical calendar. And the second solar eclipse, also occurring in 2024, will happen on the first day of the seventh month of the biblical calendar. Two very important months for Israel. These two solar eclipses will be exactly 6 months apart on the biblical calendar, and they both fall on very important dates. The fall festivals begin on the first day of the seventh month. Throughout the fall festivals, the comet of the century will be making history in the skies above our heads. It will be there for all the fall festivals. Meanwhile, here on Earth, everyone is bracing for what comes next in the Middle East. I don't believe that this is a coincidence of an all-out war and the comet of the century and a ring of fire solar eclipse and the fall festivals are all happening at the same time. I don't believe it's a coincidence. God has been directing the course of human history for thousands of years, and he continues to do so today. Signs, seasons, and times. This is the time to warn your family. This is the time to tell them to get right with God. This is the time to evangelize. This is the time to get excited because Jesus is coming back, and I'm seeing it more. I'm seeing it clearer now than I've ever seen it before, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. Let's go.